Good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you again. This is Jeff Crabb from ZYTO. I'm the Director of Marketing, and I'm excited to be here again with you guys today for the Wellness Webinar for April. This isn't an April Fool's. I know it's on April 1st, but we're glad to be here with you today. We actually have a wonderful wellness webinar prepared for you titled Inflammation, Finding the Hidden Underlying Cause. And we have Rindie Coker here with us, who has prepared a ton of information. So if you're interested, stick around. There's a lot to learn today in today's wellness webinar. A lot has been going on. Probably it's amazing what's gone on within the last 30 days, especially here in the United States. I know globally this pandemic that's gone on with COVID-19 has kind of swept across the world ever so quickly. And recently here at ZYTO, we've published a lot of really new and exciting things during this COVID-19 pandemic. And we've recorded videos with Dr. Cook, the founder and chairman of ZYTO Technologies. He has provided a great opportunity, especially if you're Select and Elite user. We have created a new Biosurvey called Today's Immunity, and that was made available to all active users. At the time, it's a $500 value that we were giving away to a lot of users. Please take advantage of it. We feel it to be very important during this time of reaching out to people that can benefit from the technology, finding solutions and during today's challenges. They're unique, and we feel strongly that the technology that Dr. Cook has created, and really through a community that we have here at ZYTO, there's a lot of value by just running scans consistently. If our bodies are well and healthy, they're better protected against serious challenges that arise. And so we feel it really important to give back into this global community. And so that was something that we've done. Additionally, I would make note that we have an exciting announcement coming out for all balance users in association with this Biosurvey of a new report that will be made available later today. And I think it's really exciting. We'll have more information about that. So if you're a current user, be prepared. Your new balance report will be available here within the next 24 hours. Take a look at it. It has everything to do with immunity and making sure that our bodies are well equipped to deal with the challenges of today. And so we understand we're a global community. If you've been negatively impacted by COVID-19, our hearts go out to you. We want nothing more than to be with you. Over the last 30 days, we as a company have had to make some pretty challenging decisions as far as events and things like that. And we know that a lot of you have been impacted by that. And I would just emphasize that first and foremost, we care about the safety and well-being of our users, our employees, and it's been really important to us to take that into account when making those decisions. And with good leadership here at ZYTO, we've been able to find ways of serving the global community through this pandemic. I'm sure this isn't going to be the last time that there's a challenge of this magnitude. And so we want you to know our level of commitment to you as a ZYTO community. It's very important. The Immunity Today Biosurvey focuses on 6 foundational areas of immunity, focuses on the immune system itself, the gastrointestinal system, the lymphatic system, respiratory, mental and emotional stress, and sleep. And like I said, if you want to learn more, you're welcome to go to zyto.com/immunity to learn more. We want to make this available to Select and Elite users. You have to have an active license. It's kind of our way of giving back, but it's a $500 value, and we're giving it away to you today for free. So take advantage of it and make sure that we're running scans and giving back to your users wherever you're at around the world. It'll be with that we can make a lot of really good change in the world. As a part of the ZYTO technology product offering, a lot of you will know of the feature called ZYTO Remote. Our phones are going off the hook right now with interest in ZYTO Remote. And if you're not familiar with it, you obviously are at least familiar with our hand cradle, but ZYTO Remote operates in a very unique way in the sense that you can actually send what we call a remote hand cradle to anyone, anywhere in the world and connect with them via the internet and run scans on them as if they were sitting across the table from you. And so a lot of people that are used to running scans face-to-face, or their business is face-to-face traditionally, they're finding, and what we're seeing is a huge uptick in sales of these remote hand cradles. And so what we want to do is the promotion for April, and as long as supplies will last, we are offering a free remote hand cradle with every order, every system that is purchased from ZYTO, starting with our balance system. So if you're interested in learning or getting access to our balance, select, elite systems, or even into the EVOX system, we are making remote very accessible to you. It's a great promotion. Rarely do we run it, but we feel especially now it's another way that ZYTO can give back and make your business thrive during this time. There's absolutely no reason that a ZYTO scan can't be run and shouldn't be run. And so this is a great opportunity. We hope you take advantage of it. If you're interested in learning more about what the promotions are, we'd encourage you to visit ZYTO.com to learn more about the promotions available to you today. And as I mentioned earlier, we're super excited for today's wellness webinar presenter. Her name is Rindie Coker. She's a naprapath and also a diplomat in clinical homeopathy. And we're super glad that Rindie could be here today with us. Hi, Rindie.
Hi, Jeff.
How are we doing today?
We're doing great. Also glad we could be here today.
Surviving all the craziness that's going on around us, huh?
Staying healthy.
Staying healthy. That's what's most important. And I think today's wellness webinar hopefully helps us out understand that at a different level. And so thank you for being here with us. First of all, I'm going to ask you the question that probably a lot of viewers are asking right now. Tell me what a naprapath is.
We are connective tissue specialists. If you're outside of Illinois or New Mexico, you've probably never heard of us. We came out of chiropractic theory, where our founder, Dr. Oakley Smith, was trying to prove the subluxation theory. And what he saw was, yes, the bones are out of place, but what's keeping the bones out of place is that series of ligaments and connective tissue that holds them together. So our manual therapy works to see the bones as a lever. We evaluate with our hands and treat really the way things hurt. Does it hurt to push this way? Push the other way. It's a beautiful way of looking at the structure of the body. And we can really enhance people's well-being. The other part of our education is nutrition, which was very important to me because that was my undergraduate education. So to find something that would combine the hands-on and the nutrition was very important to me.
I think it's brilliant. I'm always impressed when I meet people and hear the different modalities that people utilize. I'm always amazed at the success at what people are finding out there that may be considered different or different approaches and things like that, but ultimately assist people in finding wellness. And that's, I think, the power of integrating ZYTO and things like that into practices is really leveraging skill sets like yours to assist people through the challenges of life, right?
Right.
And so I always ask this as a next question, as a follow-up question. I'm curious, can you tell us a little bit about your story, how you came into contact with ZYTO, what intrigued you about ZYTO technology, and ultimately kind of what is your motivating factor? Why do what energizes you every day to do what you do?
Okay. Well, my real story is, and it's why it took me so long to get into natural medicine, was I always was interested in healing. And when I was younger, I thought for sure I was going to go into some kind of medicine. But when I was around 14, I came down with depression. And it took me years to really get back on my feet. I got sidetracked and had actually become a hairdresser in that time. So I spent now I say, well, I was working on people from the outside in. When I was in my mid-20s, I had been interested in herbs and even crystals in the 1980s. So, but I wasn't really doing that professionally. I would make things for people for fun. And then I caught this really bad cold. And it seemed like, 4 or 5 weeks went by and it wouldn't go away. And, I'd been to the doctor, of course, there's nothing we can do. So I went to a health food store. And there on the shelf was a homeopathic remedy for upper respiratory. I'd never heard of this before, but I bought it and I took it. And within 2 days, that 4-week-old cold was gone. So I put that in the back burner of my brain. And then suddenly, when I was around 30, I really had the desire to go back to my first love. So I went back to school from scratch. I got my bachelor's in nutrition, and then by almost sheer luck, moved to Chicago and discovered naprapathy. Worked for another doctor who was a naturopath and acupuncturist and discovered energy medicine. So what really, really, really lights me up is when I can treat the whole person. Because of my early days, I know what happens to the body when the mind's not right. So to be able to use all the tools for body, mind, and spirit, and to be able to take somebody from a place where they really don't feel like they can heal to where even a little better, to as better, as much as we can do, that really makes me happy.
I think that's probably a very common feeling amongst our users, is this ultimate goal of being able to help someone. And I think that's probably the majority of what we feel inside is when we wake up each day. I mean, for me, I don't necessarily have the ability to connect with people like you, but to think that we provide a technology here at ZYTO that allows users to discover paths of healing and solutions and things like that, I think it's brilliant. And so I think that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Now, explain a little bit about where does ZYTO kind of come into this story for you. When did you first hear about it, and what kind of caught your attention about the technology?
I heard about ZYTO in 2008 with one of your first presenters, Dr. John Diamond, who unfortunately is no longer with us. And I really loved his combination of using the homeopathy and the nutrition and putting that, into a type of technology that would really guide us as to not only what was going possibly on with the body, but what we could use to help. And I had such great results with those, with the scan and with those products. So that was an early balance. I've gone on to use the Select and now the Evox. So I've been using some form of the software since 2008.
Brilliant. I love that. And I think there's a lot of value in each level of our technology. It's cool. You've been around, I believe you mentioned, since 2008. So you're a long-time ZYTO user, for which we're incredibly grateful. We have a lot of users like that stick around and not only start out at very introductory levels, but then expand their understanding and usage of the technology like yourself. And so thank you for hanging around with us and helping and growing with us. We super appreciate it. ZYTO's been around for about 16 years now. So for you to be around since 2008 is not, that's pretty incredible. And we're super excited about that. So let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and kind of dive into the meat of today's conversation, which is a discussion of inflammation. And we're excited. If you're here joining us, if you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to us on the control panel, submit those questions, and Rindie would be happy to. We'll get to as many of those as we can. And if we aren't able to get to them, we'll still submit those over to her for follow-up and hopefully get to as many of them as we can. So without further ado, I'll turn the time over to you, Rindie.
All right. Thank you. So inflammation. something that we all deal with in our practices, whether we know it or not. So if you remember in 2004, Time magazine put out their cover story was on inflammation. They called it Inflammation, the Silent Killer. The article talked about how all chronic diseases are linked to inflammation, and how this normal process, if it goes awry, can turn the body against itself. The article went on to describe that the cure, of course, would be developing the right drugs to stop inflammation, and we were encouraged to take them. And of course, the article talked about statins and aspirin and the things that are still being prescribed today. But as holistic practitioners, we can take it a step further. Why try to put out a fire without addressing what's causing it in the first place? So let's take a look at the types of inflammation, how to identify it, what conditions are associated with it, and how we may help people get better. Okay?
Perfect.
So inflammation is a normal, natural, necessary biological response of the immune system to an irritant. So the irritant is often an injury. We've got inflammation that promotes healing, and we have inflammation that prevents healing. So this slide is a look at the normal inflammatory response to an injury. It creates the 4 cardinal signs of inflammation that we learn in school when we're learning about injury: pain, swelling, redness, warmth or fever, and sometimes, especially with a musculoskeletal injury, we get loss of range of motion. So what happens, and the immune system does this, is blood supply to the injury is increased, and with it the nutrients needed for healing are transported to the injured tissue. Here's where it's best to rest, keep a wound clean if there's a wound, let the body do its job. We've been taught ice, rest, compression, elevation, but current thought is not to ice it immediately, to really let the body do its job with bringing all those healing nutrients to the injury. In 24 hours, it's okay to start more with the ice and more of the anti-inflammatory process, but you really want to let that process do its job. So now let's take a look at chronic inflammation, is what most of us see in practice, whether we know it or not. A lot of the people, when I got into this, I thought, oh, I'm going to see a lot of back pain, a lot of neck pain, joints, acute injuries, things like that. It turned out not to be the case. I see a lot of people who have been in pain for years. Sometimes they have a diagnosis, sometimes they don't. I'm working with a physician in Chicago who is certified in the Bredesen Recode program for cognitive decline. And a lot of what we see here and what Dr. Bredesen believed, and a lot of other of the famous natural doctors, is that all these conditions are inflammation based. So what happens in chronic inflammation is if the body fails to eliminate the cause, which is often a pathogen, an injury that doesn't completely heal, a toxin, or more likely a group of toxins. We can look at autoimmune disorders and fibromyalgia as a result, not a cause of inflammation, even though they are called the inflammatory diseases. Lifestyle choices can trigger inflammation as well. Lack of movement, stress, and eating oxidized fats, processed foods, and smoking are some of these. So if your patient, even if they haven't been diagnosed with a chronic disease, they come to you with all over body aches and pains, fatigue, insomnia, depression, anxiety, and any GI symptoms that won't go away, or they're always feeling like they're about to catch something. And then one thing I've experienced, weight gain and inability to lose weight with diet and exercise, you might be looking at somebody with chronic inflammation. how do we test for inflammation? Well, we talk to the patient and see if they are exhibiting any of the signs or symptoms that we just mentioned. We can also do some labs. We can we can do some blood tests. We do our regular CBC and chem screen. If you're not licensed to do this, there are some online labs like direct labs, which you can go to and just order what you need, and the patient can print it out, take it to a local lab, and you can have that done. But you want to look at C-reactive protein. That's the most common marker that we use for inflammation. It doesn't always show up as elevated, and it's considered more as a marker of, for heart inflammation. But if your levels are 10 or above, it can be indicative of infections, autoimmune disease, processes of obesity, and even cancer. So that's one thing we can look at. An older marker is ESR, that's the SED rate. And that you can look at for infection and inflammation. That might also be normal as well, especially in the elderly population. Ferritin, high or low, are both causes for concern. And then, of course, cortisol, if you're doing a saliva test. Cortisol is the body's natural anti-inflammatory. So we might see that as high if a person is having an acute response, or we can see that as low. I usually see that about 2 or 3 years after a major stressful situation. So if it's either above the curve or below, we know we've had some problems with inflammation. If it's too low, the body no longer has the resources to put out the fire on its own and really needs some help. A couple of other things we can look at on this saliva test is secretory IgA. That's your first line immune system in the gut, and that can show you if there's some sort of food allergy or gut infection going on. These LPS, or these lipopolysaccharides, is the most abundant component within the cell wall of the gram-negative bacteria, and this stimulates the release of interleukin-8 and other inflammatory cytokines in various cell types, and this leads to the acute inflammatory response from these old pathogens. And the last thing we can do to look for is we have our ZYTO scans. The Balance and other biosurveys have a direct report for inflammation. If you have the lifestyle survey, the immune, a lot of the extra surveys, and then with the select, what you might see in the reports section is if you see a lot of your supplements, a lot of your balancers that are either anti-inflammatories or anti-pathogen, you know you're probably looking at some inflammation.
A quick question for you. When a user comes in, what's kind of the frequency like when a client comes in of yours? Like, do you immediately run them through testing for inflammation, or do you find that what does your intake process usually look like?
A very long conversation. My initial visit is usually about an hour and a half, where we go through their history, go through everything that they've done, where they want to go, what their version of healing looks like. And then I will often run a scan on them, and what I get from the scan, that will direct me towards running other tests, whether they're blood tests, saliva tests, urine tests. It's really decision support software. It tells me where to go.
Yes, isn't that true? Now, do people normally, they may not identify inflammation as being like a starting point, but through this conversation, as you start, are there key words usage or symptoms that they identify for you that kind of lead you down that path? Obviously, using ZYTO, you can help maybe gather additional information to support those decisions, but do they say certain things? Are they struggling with certain things that may lead you to be like, okay, this is we've talked a little bit about diet, movement is a big thing. What other things are you looking for when a user walks in that would lead you into the thought process of inflammation being a core challenge for them?
Well, I'm looking for things like pain. If they have insulin resistance, what we call prediabetes, that's some sort of inflammatory process going on. If they have stress, if they have any sort of chronic type condition. And I don't say, hey, you have inflammation. I just know in my head, all right, we're dealing with inflammation. My job as a detective is to find out why. And that
Yes.
might be what I tell them, because inflammation is not a cause, it's a result.
Absolutely. I love that. I mean, I think that it's really important. We're all about preventative, and inflammation is oftentimes the result of neglect to the body and its way of manifesting itself through that channel. So it's very well put.
Right. So yeah. So unlike the Time article, which is let's treat the inflammation, it's like, no, let's find out what's causing the inflammation.
I love that.
Yeah. So our next slide, we'll see some conditions that are related to inflammation that we all know: the autoimmune diseases, asthma, diabetes and insulin resistance, Alzheimer's, neurodegenerative diseases. Of course, we all know heart disease. Some people don't know that your dental health also has a lot to do with inflammation in the body, especially the heart and the gut. So you want to look in their mouth. Even if you're not a dentist, I am not a dentist, I'm not a medical doctor, but I still ask people what's going on in their mouth. So, and then sinuses. A lot of people come in with chronic headaches, sinusitis. So then our risk factors, what might predispose people to inflammation? Of course, there's being on the planet. We're getting older. I'm sorry, I don't have a cure for that you would want. We want to promote aging, but healthy. Obesity. This is another interesting one. Is this a cause or is this a result of inflammation? Fat cells are metabolically active. It can be both, which is why it can be so hard for people with chronic inflammation to lose weight, because it really blocks the process. Stress, of course, and sleep disorders can create risk factors for inflammation. Your diet, lack of fresh foods. People who are eating mainly, bottled boxes, cans, and drive-throughs are really not doing their inflammation a favor. Sex hormones, low sex hormones, those cortisol. Especially if you're not able to make enough cortisol, chances are you're not able to make enough sex hormones either, because it all starts from the same place. Being sedentary and smoking. And of course, with the exception of aging, these can be controlled with lifestyle.
That's unfortunate, isn't it? I wish I could control my aging.
Well, well, let's see. If we aged in reverse, that would be fun. But all right. So when I was researching this and looking for what other doctors were saying about this, I came across this quote by Dr. David Agus. And who is he? He's actually the one that wound up treating Stephen Jobs before he died. Was the one that said, oh, your fruitarian lifestyle isn't helping you. And of course, he didn't really help either. But he said, take charge of hidden, sneaky sources of chronic inflammation that can trigger illness and disease by wearing comfortable shoes daily, getting an annual flu vaccine, and asking your doctor why you're not on a statin or baby aspirin if you're over the age of 40. So that's how people who are not in holistic medicine view inflammation. And I agree with the comfortable shoes part. How about you?
No, absolutely. Yeah.
And believe me, I am not telling anybody don't get a flu shot and don't take your statins. I'm just saying that, again, you're trying to treat the result, not the cause.
Absolutely. I can agree with that.
Yes. All right. So the first, what can people do at home to help themselves? The first thing is obviously what goes in your mouth. And there are so many versions of the anti-inflammatory diet. The most common ones are talking about staying low glycemic, low sugar. You don't want to eat things that are going to spike your blood sugar. So low glycemic fruits and vegetables, the berries, the cherries, the green leafy and cruciferous vegetables. And then there's fish. Dr. Bredesen calls these the smash fish: salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring. And if people like these fish, eat at least 3 servings a week. And if you like proteins, if you like meats, you can have grass-fed beef, pastured chicken, and turkey. I am in the yes, eat beans, they are good for you camp. Some people are not, but the longest living, healthiest countries eat beans. And of course, winter squash and sweet potatoes are your good carbohydrates. And your oils. Oils are very important because rancid oils will oxidize in the body and create inflammation. So my favorites are coconut and avocado for cooking, and olive and flaxseed to make dressing. You can use butter made from grass-fed, from cows that have been pastured on grass. And you can use plant butter made from the anti-inflammatory oils. You can add flavor with good fats, especially avocados, the seeds, nuts, and of course, don't forget your herbs and spices because those are also anti-inflammatory. And of course, what you want to avoid, most people want to limit grains to 1/2 cup of serving daily. Limit or avoid dairy and gluten, especially if you're sensitive. Limit processed carbohydrates. Limit refined sugar, commercial juices, and cereals. So we can do a poll here. There are lots of different versions of the anti-inflammatory diet. So we have paleo or autoimmune paleo, vegan or plant-based, vegetarian, just eat real food, or diet doesn't matter. It's individual to the patient. What do you think? So you can tell us in the comments what your favorite anti-inflammatory diet is. We also have other changes we can make at home: an anti-inflammatory lifestyle. The most important thing I tell people is you have to do something every day that brings you joy, that is fun, that helps you laugh. If it's watching a funny show or music or playing with your pet or your kids, stress reduction techniques, but this should be something that's not a stress, something that you really, really, really enjoy doing. And this is up to the patient to find out what they like doing. All right, so now we are going to talk about finding the cause to reduce inflammation. All right?
I need all the help I can get. I think this is, I would just add, this is something that regardless of where you're at on your path of wellness, it seems to me, and your expertise will know more, but it seems to me that everyone can benefit from decrease of inflammation. I don't know that there's any individual on planet Earth that could say, oh yeah, I don't struggle with inflammation on some level. Would that be a fair statement to say?
That would be a fairly fair statement to say, because we are all exposed to most of the same things. Yeah. And if we get really sick, if we limp along through life, or if we thrive, really a lot of that really depends on how good your body is at getting rid of these things. So that's what we'll talk about next. So find the cause to reduce inflammation. The number one source of triggering the true inflammatory response is microbes. We talked about the LPS, the lipopolysaccharides, and what you can see is that untreated or incompletely resolved infections trigger a release of this NF-kappa B, which perpetuates the inflammatory response. So you'll see up at the top your LPA, then you've got this whole cascade, and NF-kappa B, there's a cycle. It just keeps going and going and going. It's like the body forgets to turn this off. So there is remove the cause, and then there's turn off the cycle. So what we find with our elderly patients and the Bredesen protocol is nearly every one of them has some sort of stealth pathogen. Most of the time it's Epstein-Barr. Sometimes it's another member of the herpes family, HH6, cytomegalovirus, those. We do this with blood work. Sometimes it's Borrelia, Bartonella, those pathogens. So, and sometimes it's parasites and fungus. So we do our best to find those, but before we get rid of them, we also try to get rid of their food. So those are the things that I mentioned earlier in diet. And then we also look for things like mycotoxins, chemicals, and heavy metal toxins, because all of those will continue to, let's just say, keep those pathogens alive and well and working in the body. So what do? We can, if you're not a medical doctor, and you can use herbs. There are a lot of really, really fabulous antimicrobials. Most of the supplement companies that you're working with will have some. Here's some examples. I found this willow herb when I was doing this research. I've never used it. I've got to find it. It's not the same thing as willow bark, which is also used for pain, but this is a whole different plant. And I can post later on a link to the PubMed article that talked about this. Yeah, the others, there's many traditional Chinese medicine formulas, cloves. You probably have some really good antimicrobials already in your dispensary. So we're also going to look at gut, because gut issues can both be the cause of and the result of inflammation. So small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, we find a lot. These lipopolysaccharides will create this intestinal permeability that we call leaky gut. Food allergies and sensitivities, and of course dysbiosis, the imbalance between the good and the bad bacteria in the large intestines. So the first part is to really heal the gut. The other thing we test for in people, especially if we can't seem to get them better and they have a lot of weird symptoms, we look at mycotoxins. We do the urine test for this. There are some other blood markers and new tests being developed. Dr. Richie Shoemaker he was the one that made us aware of these mycotoxins and their effect on human health, and had us look at sick buildings and water damaged buildings. And here in Chicago, we had a few years of really, really big rainstorms in the summer, and people's basements flooded. And if it doesn't get remediated properly, you can get mold. And if you're one of those 25% of the population that does not get rid of these mycotoxins, you can get really sick down the road. So generally, and again, there's some really good kits out there that will help you, but it's really identifying and getting out of the mold, and then using the appropriate binders and other supplements to get rid of them.
I just want to interject here really quick. What's kind of the average time frame that a user would go through before they start to see Like if you come into an initial consultation working with someone and they start, changing diet or lifestyle or, whatever some of your recommendations are, what's kind of the average time frame that someone would expect before they could see some symptom relief, through these challenges?
Depends on what they have. If they've been really, really sick, it could take months. If they're being more proactive, then it really doesn't take long at all. But we're going to get into that a little bit later, because we've probably heard the saying that for every year you've been sick, it's going to take a month of really, really hard, really hitting this to get well. And what we've changed in our approach after doing this medicine for a couple of years is we used to test one or two things at a time. And then all of a sudden we are finding so many mycotoxins and non-metal industrial chemicals that we're doing all that at the beginning. And now it's really just building up the body so we can sequence the detox.
See, and I think that's kind of where I was going with that is I love your technique and the importance of really front loading this so that the body can begin to really take advantage of the opportunity that you're providing it to take care of itself. I mean, that's ultimately what it's about. So I think it's absolutely brilliant what you're doing and what you provide to your clients.
Yeah. So their first visit with me is food, because food really, you can take all the supplements in the world, but if you're not eating the right things for you, it's not going to help. And then if they have bugs or toxins, they come back to me, and they all have bugs and toxins. So, we go over that, other lifestyle changes, cleaning up, finding out what's going on in the house. Do you have anything with an old exposure? Personal care products. It can get really, really, really overwhelming, especially for people with cognitive decline. So I'm really looking to simplify this process for people.
Yes.
Yeah. And so after we've talked to them and gotten this going, then I'll do the scan. And the remedies and the services in their report gives us an idea of what the body is ready to work on. And sometimes it isn't. Sometimes we need to do nutrients. Sometimes we need to do saunas or emotional support, vitamins and minerals, other things to really activate the body. I've stopped jumping into cleanses because a lot of time that's just overloading. I was taught really well in my homeopathic, especially my homotoxicology training, that it's drainage before detox. So we really want to improve the functioning of those organs of elimination. We've got to get the liver, the kidney, the GI tract. All those need to be working well before we can start removing. So you might be 2 or 3 months on drainage remedies and nutritional support and gut healing before we get into the deep detox. So we really need to let the patient know that this is a long-term plan, and it's not just take this and you're going to get better. And then if you want to give them some anti-inflammatory support, there are other supplements you can use that will bring down the symptoms. Homeopathically, if you have an acute injury, a lot of people know about arnica. You can buy that anywhere, good to have on hand, for bumps and bruises, sports injuries, things like that. A couple of the other ones are for more long-term. And then, of course, omega-3s. I'm really going more for the algae-based ones than the fish lately. I just feel like, they're what the fish eat to make their omega-3s. So there's some companies now that are making some really good algae-based. And then if you have people who are allergic to fish or would rather not have anything animal source, you've got something for them. Enzymes are really, really great. If you have really high C-reactive protein and you know you've got cardiac inflammation in the blood vessels, you've got nattokinase. If you have more tissue injury, musculoskeletal pain, I love serrapeptase, and there's some combinations out there. Curcumin, everybody knows about. You have to make sure that it's a brand that is been formulated to be absorbable by the body. Straight turmeric is not going to do it. NAC and lipoic acid are going to help with the body making its own glutathione. You want to be careful with these if you're dealing with heavy metals, if they're not part of a big program. And then there's mushrooms. So these are all things that you can use to support the body while you're getting ready to do a detox. Okay. So to put it all together, of course, first you have to assess the patient. Talk to the patient, find out what's going on with them, how long it's been going, what they've already done, and what their goals are. Do they want to just get rid of a symptom? Do they want to get into long-term health? Because that will determine what you can do with them. You want to find the triggers. Are they pathogens, toxins, old injuries? You want to prepare the patient nutritionally, emotionally, and physically, and let them know that it's not a quick fix. And then, use whatever is in your practitioner toolbox to remove the triggers and turn off the inflammatory cascade.
It's brilliant. I have so enjoyed this. There's something that you alluded to earlier that I think is really important for our users to understand, and that is, when you're looking at someone, there's a correlation that takes place, and I think a lot of people understand this generically, but specifically when it comes to assisting people overcome these challenges, the correlation between emotions to different parts of the body to teeth. I mean, you talked about all those different types of things and that you look at the person as a whole. And I think that that's really, really important. It's probably, I would say, one of the most overlooked ideas when people are looking at even a ZYTO scan, that idea of looking at the individual as a whole. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? And maybe as a follow-up to that, share a little bit about, I know you own several of our systems. You own the EVOX, which focuses on the emotional components of wellness. You own our Select system, a Balance system. So you have a wide variety of tools from ZYTO that help and benefit you in this process of discovery. But can you share a little bit about that for us, about the process you may go through and some of the tools that you use?
Mm-hmm. Most of the time it's a conversation. I tell my patients that if they talk to me long enough, they're going to tell me what's really going on. I look at past trauma. There is a lot. I'm preaching to the choir here, but so much childhood abuse that goes on. And again, it's not a cause, and it's not their fault, and it's not because this happened. It's because it was a stressor and a trigger.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I look at, and what have they done to heal from that? The scan is great because it tells us emotions. I also run the flower essences. And especially when an emotion comes up really, really high, I talk to them about that. I said, hey, where is this going on in your life? Either it's happening or it's something that when it does happen, you have a hard time dealing with it. And they might not remember it then, but later on they'll come back and say, oh yeah, this is what it is. And then the other thing for them is, do they really have the hope that they can get better? Because people who are chronic, they've seen a million people, and you're 1,000,001, and you've got to help them believe in themselves again.
Isn't that true? I hear that more often than I would like to, as far as people that come to our practitioners as a last case scenario, right? They've gone through all the other more traditional ways of thinking and modalities and things like that. And they oftentimes come to our users as their last resort. And I think providing the hope, like you've talked about, is key at healing. If a person can believe that there's an opportunity or something that can happen for them, then they're more engaged, they're more willing to participate with you, and it goes a long ways, I think.
And you have to be realistic with them. If,
Mm-hmm.
you might not get them 100% out of what they're in, but they
Yeah.
know that, a lot of people want some relief from that everyday pain, if that's an emotional pain, physical pain, whatever this is.
Yeah, I think that I'm going to put you on the spot, but I hope you're okay with it. But I was just thinking, share with us a little bit, and if you have a customer that comes to mind, and obviously I'm not asking for names or anything, but of an experience that you've seen someone go through this process of dealing with inflammation and the success and their kind of story, like how life-altering was that for them? Is there anyone that comes to mind in particular for you?
Yeah, I have a favorite client. She's when we talk about the people we would love 100 of, it's her. She came to me referred by a naturopath who's a friend of mine, and she was told, you got to go find. Somebody else said, go find a naprapath, and of course, like everybody else, she heard naturopath. She calls my friend Melody. Melody refers her to me, and she comes in, and we go through our typical conversation. And then somewhere, I can't remember if it was the first or the second visit, she says, I am just so angry with my mother. She had become, dealing with her own, 30 years of fibromyalgia. But she was also the caretaker for mom, and there were some boundary issues there. So we talked about this, and our first 2 sessions actually were evocs. I didn't touch her. I didn't do any tests. We just evocs on mom. And the 3rd session, she just came into it totally different. So since then, we've worked on everything. Every time she comes in, we do a supplement review, an energy work, and a napropathic treatment. And it's been a couple of years, but she is much, much, much better. She's not out of the woods. Unfortunately, she contracted some infection that kind of re-inflamed her that she picked up on a blood test. So, and she was moving, so a lot more stressors, but she came through that so much better than she would have 2 years ago. And she's been dealing with this, she said, probably since her teens.
Unbelievable. Wow. That experience probably isn't too rare for you to see, I would imagine, in the sense that when people take things like this, inflammation, like I said earlier, I see it as being such an issue for everybody, because we're just inundated with things that are inflammatory, whether it's emotionally or physically, or all these different elements are always just inundating our bodies with these stresses. And I think that you've eloquently put that the importance of making sure that we keep our bodies moving and providing the necessary support to overcome and combat the inflammation that we're all dealing with. I just want to say thank you so much. This presentation has been phenomenal. I hope for everyone that's attending with us live today has had a chance to really take some good notes. I've learned a ton of things that I need to be improving on. And if we haven't been able to get to your questions, we've been hopefully responding to as many as we can during this live webinar. Anything that we haven't responded to, we'll get to. And we'll hopefully be in contact back with Rindie. But Rindie, thank you so much for being a participant with us today for today's wellness webinar. Thank you.
Jeff,
Thank you.
thank you so much for having me.
And Rindie has been so kind as to offer up an email address. So if you have any questions for her, you're welcome to reach out to her at the email address there on the screen. It's Rindie@ameritech.net, and she'd be happy to respond to any questions that she receives there. Once again, I just want to say thank you so much to Rindie. She put a lot of time and effort into that presentation. I learned a ton, and I hope everyone that was here live with us learned a lot. Our next wellness webinar is scheduled for May 6th, 2020. I can't even believe that I'm saying that. It's already May almost. Well, I should say it just barely turned April. Maybe I should cool my jets. But May 6th is our next wellness webinar, 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time as always. We're going to be talking about better relationships for better health. It'll be awesome as always. This has turned into such a fun forum for discussion and learning opportunities, and we hope everyone takes advantage of it. I would just make note again of the cool new Biosurvey that has been made available for select and elite users. That is part of the promotion for this these upcoming weeks, and so if you're interested in that Biosurvey, we are giving it away for free with every select and elite system that is purchased. In addition to that, we're releasing, and maybe this is a little premature, but this is a sneak peek to all you watching live. For all balance users, there is a new a new report that will be available later today or within the next 24 hours, we'll say. So keep your eyes out for that. We'll have more information to come on that. And as far as the April promotions are concerned, I would just point out the importance of running scans consistently. We understand a lot of businesses have been impacted by this COVID-19. Part of our specials for this next several weeks, we're going to be focused on providing remote scanning technology available for all of our users. And so if you're interested in the Balance or the Select Elite or our EVOC system, we have free of charge with the purchase a remote hand cradle. And that is unprecedented. We've never done anything like that. And in addition to that, with the Select and Elite, you'll get the $500 value Biosurvey. The EVOC system, we're providing free remote kit. So if you're interested in learning more, please visit ZYTO.com. Reach out to us. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have. But we are so thankful for your time being here with us. If you're watching this after the fact on YouTube or somewhere else, thanks for taking the time to watch with us. And until next time, this is Jeff Crabb, and we'll see you then. Thanks. Bye.